She left me for a rich guy and invited me to her wedding, so I showed up with a surprise that left both of them crying. I dated Tilly for 4 years. We lived in a tiny apartment with a broken heater and a shower that only ran hot for 6 minutes. I was working at a tech startup making $42,000 a year. She worked at a boutique selling overpriced candles. We talked about marriage constantly. I was saving for a ring. Then I came home early one Thursday and found her in our bed with a guy named Vincent. He was 38, drove a Porsche, and owned 3 restaurants downtown. Tilly didn't even look guilty. She looked relieved. Vincent sat up and said, "Sorry, man, but she was always out of your league." Tilly nodded. Actually nodded. "He's right, OP. I've been settling. Vincent can give me the life I deserve." I moved out that weekend. I assumed things would be rough for a while, but they weren't. That same week, my startup got acquired. I sold my part of the company for $6.2 million after taxes. And I knew exactly what happened when you tell people that you have a lot of money. So I didn't tell anyone. I moved to a nicer apartment, kept my old car, and started a new company. And it was around this time that I got an invitation in the mail. It was to Tilly and Vincent's wedding. Handwritten note inside, "No hard feelings. Would love for you to come celebrate with us." I stared at that invitation for a long time. The audacity was almost impressive. The wedding was in 3 weeks. Surprisingly, my answer was a no-brainer. I RSVP'd yes, because I wasn't coming with just me. I was coming with me and a little surprise, one that would change everything. On the day I could barely contain my excitement. I showed up in a simple gray suit, nothing flashy. Tilly spotted me during cocktail hour. Her face did something complicated. "OP, you actually came?" she asked. "Yes, you invited me," I said calmly. Vincent appeared behind her, arm around her waist. "Hey man, glad you could make it. No hard feelings about everything, right?" "None at all," I said, trying my hardest not to smirk. Tilly looked me up and down, and her eyes widened when she saw my Rolex watch. She was practically drooling. "You look good. What are you doing these days?" she asked, pretending not to care. I knew it was almost time for my surprise to come. I answered, "Tech stuff. Boring." Vincent laughed. "Are you still working for free at that little startup?" "Hey, nothing wrong with that. Someone's got to do the real work while the big guys like me run things." I didn't say anything, just locked eyes with him and hoped he'd be okay when I showed him the ace I had up my sleeve. During the toasts, Vincent's business partner stood up and talked about Vincent's restaurant empire, his vision, his success. Then he mentioned they were expanding. "We just signed a deal for the most advanced management software in the industry. Vincent's restaurants are going to be fully automated within 2 years. This is the future, people." I sipped my wine. The partner continued. "The company is called GridPoint Systems. Absolute game changer." After dinner, Vincent found me at the bar. He spoke. "OP, I gotta be honest, you're being really cool about everything. Tilly was worried you'd cause a scene." I smiled at his foolishness. "Why would I cause a scene?" He clapped me on the back. "I don't know, man. I took your girl. Most guys would be bitter." I shrugged. "Things worked out." He nodded. "That's the spirit. Hey, you work in tech, right? You ever heard of GridPoint Systems? We just signed a massive contract with them." I laughed. "Yes, I've heard of them." He continued. "The CEO is some mystery guy. Nobody knows who he is. He keeps a low profile." That's when I knew it was time for my little surprise. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the business card of my company, slid it across the bar. Vincent picked it up and read it. His face went completely white. He looked up at me slowly. "You're the one who owns GridPoint Systems?" I nodded. He started stammering. "But that's a $31 million company. That's the company we just signed with." I corrected him. "We're closer to $34 million now, and I look forward to working with you." Tilly appeared beside Vincent and looked at him. "What's wrong? You look sick." Vincent couldn't speak. He just handed her my business card. I watched the color drain from her face as she realized I owned a $34 million company. She whispered, "You said you were still at the startup. I thought you were broke." I shrugged again, trying to hold back my laugh at her reaction. "Anyway, congratulations on the wedding. The venue is beautiful." My phone buzzed twice on the drive home. Tilly's number. I blocked her. People who've fallen in love with the same person twice? What happened? I was planning to propose to the girl of my dreams that night and made sure everything was perfect. I took her out to dinner at her favorite restaurant, made sure the camera crew was waiting at our favorite spot. She was so happy. I was feeling the ring box in my pocket as I watched her dance down the street, and I was so in love. I couldn't wait to ask her to be my wife. But then, as she was twirling on the sidewalk, I saw her suddenly light up. There were bright white lights coming towards her, and when I turned around and saw the headlights coming straight towards her, they weren't gonna swerve out of the way, and the truck was gonna hit her. Everything was in slow motion. I tried to push her out of the way, but I only had a few seconds. The F350 was right in front of me, and as I tried to cover her with my body, I felt it slam into my back. It hit us at 30 miles per hour, and we both flew 15 feet before we hit the concrete. I didn't know where I was, and didn't even care my leg was broken. I used all the strength I had to get up and limp over to her. She was laying there, her pretty white dress covered in dirt, and when I kneeled over her, I just looked at her face. I could hear the truck driver yelling at us, people asking if we were okay, but none of that mattered. I was just looking at my girl, and I saw her look back at me. She smiled, and that was the last thing I remember before I lost consciousness. The next thing I knew, I was waking up in the hospital bed, and when I remembered what happened, I instantly asked the nurse where she was. She tried to tell me to lay back down, but I begged her to tell me she was okay. She told me I just needed rest, but I didn't care. As soon as she left the room, I grabbed the crutches and snuck out. I found what room she was in, and I hobbled down the hospital hallways until I saw the room. When I looked through the window, I saw both of her parents crying. They were sitting next to her in bed, but I couldn't see her. I was about to walk inside when someone grabbed my shoulder. I turned around and saw the doctor. He asked, "Are you her boyfriend?" I nodded yes, and he told me before I went in there was something I should know. He told me she hit her head really hard and in a very specific way, that she was having memory loss. What do you mean? Like she can't remember how to do math or something? But we both looked in the room. I realized why her parents were crying and knew she didn't remember them. I took a deep breath and went inside. She was laying there, completely covered in bruises and wires, but I didn't care. She still looked so beautiful. I looked at her and felt the tears in my eyes. But when she looked back, I could tell she didn't recognize me. I said, "Hey, beautiful," but she just looked at me weird. Then out of nowhere, she smiled. "Hey, you're weird looking." I laughed. "But you're cute." And in that moment, I couldn't resist. I kissed her, and the moment I did, her jaw dropped. She started blushing and said, "Oh my God, the cute guy kissed me." Then I did it again, and her world exploded. We started dating all over again, and even though she still doesn't have have any memory before that day. We're making new ones.
On my 13th birthday, I came into school and saw my best friend staring at me like she hated me. "Kristen," I called out with a smile, expecting her to run over and tackle me with a hug like she always did. Instead, Kristen looked me up and down, rolled her eyes, and turned her back to me. My stomach dropped as I jogged to catch up. "Kristen, wait, did you forget what today is?" Kristen yanked her arm away like I had burned her. "Don't touch me. I'm not in the mood to deal with you today." My mouth fell open as she walked away. We had been best friends since kindergarten, 8 years. She had never spoken to me like that. I told myself she must be having a bad morning. I walked into first period and spotted our friend group in the back corner. "Hey guys," I waved as I approached. Sophie looked up first. She nudged Becca, who nudged Grace. All three went silent and stared at me with blank expressions. "What?" I asked nervously. Sophie snorted. "Other than disappointment? Nothing." The other girls laughed. Mean, sharp laughs that made my chest tighten. I stood frozen as they whispered, glancing at me and snickering. I took my seat across the room, alone. Lunch was worse. I carried my tray to our usual table where all 6 of my closest friends sat. When I went to sit down, Becca put her hand on the empty chair. "This seat's taken." "By who?" "Anyone but you." Tears pricked my eyes as Grace added, "Why don't you go sit by the trash cans? You'd fit right in." The table erupted in laughter. I walked to an empty table in the corner. My birthday cupcakes sat untouched in my locker, homemade. I had stayed up until midnight frosting each one. After lunch, I found my locker had been decorated, but not with balloons and streamers. Someone had taped printed photos of me to the door with the words, "Loser," and "Nobody wants you here," written in red marker across my face. A crowd had gathered, pointing, laughing, recording on their phones. I ripped the photos down with shaking hands as tears streamed down my cheeks. Kristen stood at the front of the crowd with her arms crossed. I searched her eyes desperately for any sign of my best friend. "Kristen, please," I begged. "What did I do wrong?" Kristen stepped forward and leaned close to my ear. "You were born. That's what you did wrong." That's when I ran. I ran out of the school and didn't stop until I reached my front door. My hands trembled so badly I could barely turn the doorknob. I burst inside, ready to collapse into my mother's arms and sob until I couldn't breathe anymore. Surprise! Streamers exploded in my face. Balloons bounced across the ceiling. Every single person who had tormented me at school stood in my living room with massive grins on their faces. Mom rushed forward and shoved a sparkly party hat onto my head, while tears were still running down my cheeks. "Happy birthday, sweetheart," Mom squealed, adjusting the elastic under my chin. Wasn't that hilarious? It was all my idea. I stood frozen. My chest heaved. Kristen bounded over and threw her arms around me. "Oh my god, you should have seen your face at lunch. We got you so good." "The locker thing was genius," Dad added, appearing beside Mom with his phone out. "I told the girls exactly what to write. We've been planning this for weeks." Sophie grabbed my arm and shook it excitedly. "You actually cried. That made it so much better." I stared at my parents, at my friends, at the banner that read, "Happy 13th birthday, Lily," in glittery letters. Everyone was laughing, celebrating, high-fiving each other over how perfectly the prank had gone. Mom tilted her head. "Lily, say something, honey. Aren't you surprised?" I reached up slowly and pulled the party hat off my head. "I have something for you, Kristen." I walked to my backpack by the door and pulled out a wrapped box. The box I had hidden for 3 weeks. The box that held the matching friendship necklace I had saved 4 months of allowance to buy. One half for her, one half for me. I held it out to Kristen. Her eyes lit up as she reached for it. I pulled it back and walked to the kitchen trash can. I dropped it inside. "Lily!" Mom gasped. "What are you doing?" I turned to face all of them. My voice came out steady for the first time all day. "You want to know what I wished for this morning when I woke up? I wished that this year I would finally stop wondering if you guys actually liked me. I wished I could stop second guessing if my friends really wanted me around." I wiped my eyes. Thanks for answering that question. I walked past all of them toward the stairs. Mom grabbed my arm. "Lily, it was just a joke. We did all this for you." I looked at her hand on my arm, then up at her face. "You watched me walk out of this house this morning with a smile on my face, and you knew exactly what was waiting for me." I pulled my arm free. "That's not love, Mom. That's cruelty with confetti." I walked up the stairs, stepped into my room, and locked the door behind me.